Hello, I'm Shieldwall100 and welcome back to my channel for a second quick critique of mine in a short space of time. We recently just covered the 3 Jokers and now it's time to go through the remaining releases that accompanied him, them, whatever. And yes, it's more Joker themed. It was a very Joker themed month, as I said before. The first real Joker themed month we've had for the 3rd edition, I think. So here we are, and it's Gaggy, the sidekick, come henchman now, the Joker's Paramilitary set, and Joker's Victims. Be interesting. So let's have a look at those models, do some build quality, and go through some rules. Okay, let's start off. Well, let's make a start with the smallest guy, shall we? And this is Gaggy, the second version of this character, one of the original Joker sidekicks, before pre-Harley Quinn, basically. And yes, perhaps I think it's probably the cheapest model you can get from Knight at the moment. He comes with just over £5 for this diminutive character. Just give you an idea, there he is next to some normal sized people, so to give you an idea as to what sort of stature he has. And yeah, he's a sound model. Yes, relatively few parts and quite an easy build, thank goodness, nothing too difficult. Waving his electric cattle prod around, the detailing was pretty sweetly sculpted on. Yeah, there you go, just let it focus for you. Yeah, looking forward to it. It'll be easy enough to get done as well, I think. Yes, don't forget the original version of Gaggy came on a pogo stick, and so yeah, this is a much more ordinary version of him. Some of the rules of that pogo stick are kind of confusing, so good to, if you want to do this character, good to have a normal one if you don't want a headache. Right, moving on, we'll do the Joker's Victims next in terms of which models there were. Don't forget, we're looking at the sculpt and build quality for the second, and yeah, so Joker's Victims come in 3s, and these are the victims from the 3 Jokers. These are kind of like they're sort of animated corpses-ish, maybe, and they're poisoned. These are all poisoned people who are just like in thrall of the Joker at the very least, and mindless victims, under his control, and vicious, set on killing things. And they're all dressed up as bellhops for the time being, just as in the comic book. Okay, so let's have a look at how the models actually came out. So you've got one who's unarmed, and yes, I'm going to need to heat him up at the ankle, at the foot, and bend him forward, because he's not supposed to be jumping into the air like a basketball player. He is actually meant to be sort of running forwards. It'll do. I've seen worse, and it's a really easy job to fix. I just need to heat up some water and be bothered to do it. It's a thing. But otherwise, yes, the disturbing smile is definitely there to see, and yeah, but not too fussed about the joints. Had a little bit of problem with this guy's butt, as you can see there. Had to fill it in a bit. Again, these are never difficult things to do in practice. It just means you having to have the sculpting stuff out when you get it is a little bit disappointing. This batch of models had a little bit more to do than the usual stuff from Knight, in my experience. Everyone's mileage may vary. Some people may have nothing to do. I always hear stories from people who have more to do than I do. When they're if they're complaining or just commenting, whatever. I generally must get quite lucky, so I guess this was a bad one for me. Moving on, there's a guy with a piece of piping there. Again, the disconcerting smile. A bit more. Yes, this one had a bit more sculpting, like I was saying, to do. It's just filler, really. It's not difficult. I mean, trousers are easy. It's not like I'm trying to resculpt hair or a face or something like that. We'll come to something like that maybe in a little bit. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's not that, it's difficult. It wasn't a difficult job to do, and overall the rest of the model went together really, really well. The details are definitely there to see. Do like. And the final one, here we go, more standard pose, but again the maniacal smile stroke laugh, holding a knife. So they're not proper zombies if they're wielding weapons, so they've got some wherewithal to them. And yeah, a very easy build, this one. Quite happy with him. Looks good too. And finally, we'll go on to the last blister, the expansion henchman pack set, really, for Joker. Oh god, the Joker's Paramilitary set, which is kind of odd because, I mean, they're not necessarily paramilitary, but it's a good name to just differentiate them from the others. Joker's had plenty of releases for henchmen down the years, so here we go. So first we've got a guy with a kukri and dreadlocks, because, you know, why not? I like this guy. Pose was good. This is the sort of pose that I wanted for the Joker's victim, you know, in terms of so I don't have to heat this guy up at the feet to get him running forwards. And yeah, I just like it. Oh look, there's a bit of sculpting needed again. See what I mean? This release just had a few butt problems for me. A bit of a pain in the ass. But yeah, nothing I can't fix, nothing that paint won't hide really. And yeah, it's good. All these guys have got masks. This one just has kind of a bag over his head. Seen that on other Joker models. And move on to Mr. Paramilitary 2, a much larger chap, a bit more of a static pose. But yeah, I think this is a good one for a rocket launcher because he looks like he's just getting into position there with the supporting rock, which I don't know, wasn't necessarily needed. I think the supporting rock isn't there to support the model. The model can easily sustain its weight on the base. It's just that it just looks like this. It just adds weight to the rocket launcher, so I kind of appreciate that because it makes it look like he needs to brace himself in order to get into a firing position. And as you can see, as you've no doubt noticed, a bit of standard filler around the arm joint there is necessary. There's an occupational hazard when you're dealing with a weapon that's held in two hands, is that one of the arms might be just a little bit out of sync with the other once the weapon goes on. But yeah, a good model. I do like his mask. If I can just get that in focus, please. Yeah, there you go. See those teeth sculpted on. Do make it a lot easier to paint. Mark my words. And finally, the last of the Joker's Paramilitary. Yeah, this one's got some comment to do on him, but yeah, again, look at there's the face, making it much easier to paint. Holding his custom submachine gun. Hooray! That's here again. And yeah. No filling to do. However, I got some bad luck because look at his foot. I had to resculpt his foot because it was just a bit of a club foot, unfortunately. Annoyingly, I think it escaped quality control, such as it is, because it looked like there was a shoe, sort of. It was just pointing in slightly the wrong direction. I realised it definitely wasn't a copy of that boot. So out came the sculpting tool, and I've done a reasonable job. I think once I've painted it, it won't really show too much as different from the Rain one. But it's sort of thing, these are premiumly priced models, so come on. I mean, I do really like the product overall. I mean, I love these sculpts overall. I mean, the detail on them is great, but I shouldn't have to do things like this. So I have to, and for the integrity of my channels and my reviews, I have to call out the bad with the good. You know, I'm not out to, I don't get anything for doing these. You know, I'm not on a payroll or whatever, and I'm just, I've got to be honest. But overall, I'm really happy with these models. I've got to say, they're going to paint up well. Yes, I had to fill some bits, probably more than I would expect to, and that's a bit of a downer for this particular release. But overall, and I realise I'm not the majority here perhaps, but I've always had really generally good sculpts from Knight overall. And so yeah, this time a bit disappointed, but it's not going to stop me from being able to use these models by any means. I haven't done my money or whatever. Okay, so yeah, that's the model quality and sculpts. They're all certainly distinguishable as themselves, and I'll be able to use them. They'll go in my display case once they're painted up. It's going to be time now. We're going to look at some of the rules for these models and how they affect the game. This is going to be quite interesting, I think. Right, I've got the rules here. I'm going to be trying to overlay them in much the same format I did with the three Jokers, so I hope that this format works out better for you guys. It certainly should do. Right, so starting with Gaggy. He's here, and he is, as you can see, he's a henchman for the Joker, so he's not a free agent or a sidekick anymore. Interestingly, this guy can be taken in addition to just about all your models, as we'll see in a second, coming in at 16 reputation, which is as diminutive as his physical stature, but unfortunately he does have the stats to match. But he's got his little role. We'll get there. So the willpower and endurance is very much sub most henchman standards. His attack and defense characteristics also, and his strength is a 6 up, which is naff. Well, it's negligible, and his standard movement of 8 for a tiny guy makes sense. His stat line is very much a 16-pointer. But yeah, he's got his electric baton for 2 stun damage, electric, handy and mechanical, so he can actually do some worrying damage, but with his attack value of 3, it's unlikely he's going to be causing an awful lot. The strength die though will hurt on 3s. That's useful. But with a defense of 2 and endurance 4, will he get to use it? I wouldn't count on it, but again, 16 points. Think 16 points. He has aggressive schizophrenia, because we love to stigmatize those with mental health issues in the Batman miniatures game. But to be fair, I don't know if many other comic books deal with mental health issues like Batman does overall. So okay, that gives him, I believe it gives him an additional attack action if he starts his contact, if he starts his turn in contact with another model, friend or foe. So it's certainly a useful rule to have, but again, will someone with his stat line get to use it? If you're using a swarm sort of crew, with you've got lots of henchmen running around, or just models in general, he could potentially get some out of that. But again, this is a skirmish game. It's very, it's kind of situational, but potential. A version Harley Quinn, obviously, so he can't he be in the same crew as Harley Quinn, because he does actually hate her. There's a whole mini comic book arc in the Gotham City Sirens with Gaggy in it, and yes, he really has a problem with that lady there. Demotivate and provoke are 2 kind of funky rules with specials. So if you're giving Gaggy if you're giving Gaggy audacity, he can potentially do this, but provoke is, demotivate's kind of useful, puts enervating on an enemy perhaps. If you're about to dogpile someone, I don't think I've ever used demotivate in any of my games against anyone, but I'm probably going to be told that I'm missing out on something, but I've never seen a use for it. Handy to have, very situational though. Provoke though is a potentially is this guy's potential party piece. Okay, provoke is an opposed willpower roll against an enemy, so chances are you're going to win it. So it's likely to be successful, and if you are, words. Provoke means if you successfully use it against an enemy model, that enemy model can only attack Gaggy until Gaggy's dead or Gaggy uses it on someone else. That's really, really amazingly useful potentially, because say, if your opponent really wants to hunt someone down and get them, you can potentially force them to have to attack Gaggy instead. That can mess with people's some objective mark cards or something. Just think about using against Court of Owls or something like that to annoy them. Of course, it then means that Gaggy will die and he's very easy to kill. 16 points. Just keep 16 points in your mind. That's all you need to worry about. But yeah, it could annoy someone, especially if having used provoke, Gaggy then is activated to move and just runs away somewhere where you can't get him easily. That's a problem for your opponent. And then Psycho, it's just a standard one. You can look that up in the compendium. Means your willpower can't be modified. And True Love Joker, Joker the Clown, incidentally, one of the 3 Jokers, because in this Gaggy does appear in the 3 Jokers storyline. I've got it, and I've seen this guy in the panels, and yes, he is the clown's sidekick. Rather than the criminals or the comedians. So there you go. Again, even with the bonuses, these stats aren't going to get that much better. He goes up to attack 4 and willpower 6. But he's still going to get killed pretty quickly with his defense 2 and 4 endurance potentially. So yeah, overall, Gaggy, is a handy thing. He's not, if he was, thankfully, he's not like a 15 quid model or euro model, depending upon where you are. There's that. At least it's not Damian Wayne syndrome. But he's all right, and could be fun, and it's good to have him along. Right, let's move on and have a look at who's next. Going to move on to Joker's paramilitary set next, because they're a little bit more straightforward, and I can then talk about the victims last, because there's a fair bit to get into with them. Joker's paramilitary is just 3 relatively standard henchmen, which you can use and swap out for your usual fare. So that's nice to bear in mind. And you've got a good mixture of close combat and some ranged as well. Okay, so we're going to start with Joker's Paramilitary 1, whose stats should be up on the screen already. What you'll notice is, just in the traits quickly, he's got Street Guy on him and Undercover. These 2 traits are shared across all 3 of them. So any comments on this one will apply to the others. I mean, Street Guy means that you get to re-roll. What's it? Enemies must re-roll a successful hit if you're in cover. I think Street Guy should really just be, in the English, it would be Streetwise would be a better one. And Undercover gives you a bonus 8-inch move deployment zone. Sorry, so before the game starts, you get extra 8 inches on your deployment zone. That's really cool, because some of the deployment zones are really restrictive, so yeah, having it on your henchmen could be bloody useful, to be perfectly honest, especially if they're still in inspiration range, because that means that they can get out there and start doing some objective stuff a lot earlier. Yeah, so that's on all these guys, so handy things to have. But going back to Paramilitary 1, as you can see, this is the close combat-y one, as looks like it on his model and pose. Willpower and endurance 5. He only works for Joker as a henchman, fair enough, 23 reputation, putting him in there sort of the mid-range, definitely not taking on the Soldiers of Fortune 1-for-1 in terms of rep or capability anytime soon, but he's round about cop level, shall we say, and the stats bear that out with attack and defense 3, strength of 5+, movement 10, as a lot of 3rd edition models get. That's useful. Not many Joker models, most of the Joker henchmen so far are movement 8 as well, because of that was the old standard, and a lot of them have been copied over from the previous editions. So movement 10, that extra 2 inches could make all the difference, I've heard. The Kukri is a split damage weapon, which I've come to appreciate split damage a bit more than I used to. I used to think it's either double stun or double blood or go home, really, but no, it's because it's got that kind of mixture of doing that permanent damage whilst also dissuading your opponent from putting in efforts to defend themselves because of the accumulating stun. So there you go, and it's a good weapon too, because it's handy and sharp, which means both your attack dice and your strength dice will be can be re-rolled, which is none too shabby either, and heavy, so I mean you actually get that strength hit on a 4+ instead of a 5. It's just, it gives your opponent could be that little bit more worried about this guy. The traits, there's really nothing there to write home about. Hardened is kind of useful, situational sometimes, but yeah, over the course of a game it can save your bacon. It means that you can, each time you get damaged, you can swap out the blood for a stun or vice versa, so you can just take that bit of damage which could keep you in there a bit longer than not. The bloodthirsty mental disorder, that's the one where you get, if you've taken damage, you get an extra attack marker, which again, it's useful, but it means you actually had to have been hit and survived first, which for a henchman in this game might be easier said than done. So there you go. So that's Joker's Paramilitary 1 done. He's a handy kind of useful beta sort of model, but again, if you're moving and attacking with him, then yeah, that means you're giving him audacity. There's probably things that hit harder in your crew, so your mileage may vary, but for 23 points you can certainly have a hardened and Street Guy gives him that bit more, maybe gives him a bit more survivability for someone who's moving around putting down suspect markers. So see how it goes. Moving on to Joker's Paramilitary 2, you could probably see some similarities there. He's in the 28 rep now, so he's gone up to the high 20s as opposed to the low ones. $500 funding, so that's a chunk. That is a chunk. The same stat line as your previous guy, so kind of fairly standard henchman stats. In the weapon department, this is where it gets it. The knife, it's nothing really. It's there. It could be useful, but I doubt you'll see it very often, to be honest. But the custom assault gun comes out again, so here it is again. It's that gun, which as used by Larider from the SWAT team, and that Black Mask thug, number 7 I think, and possibly others by now, but here he is again. Everyone's getting one now. Yes, this is one of the better guns in the game, and now Joker's got it to use. 3 shots, 3 shots plus a strength die, doing double blood, which has assault, and the red dot rules means you can re-roll a miss. It's right up there with the good one, the good stuff. You can just delete enemy henchmen in annoying places, or really worry tougher enemies too. So yeah, and the extra and all those shots really puts the pressure on people with dodge as well, as they start to use up all their all their stun damage, all their willpower, sorry, for doing so. Right. Interestingly though, his traits, as well as the standard street guy and undercover, you've got anger management, which means he has to spend an effort in order to prevent himself. He has to use an effort. Sorry, if he doesn't take an attack action during his turn. So. That's kind of interesting because again, when you're dealing with lots of henchmen in a crew, you might be tempted to not to give them all audacity. Audacity hogs are a problem in Joker crews. I know that from playing them. So this guy, if you don't want to stand still and shoot, which with an assault gun you might not want that, you have to give him audacity. So yeah, or he starts accruing damage. So there's a slight downside. It's quite an interesting one to do. And a bulletproof vest is there, so just in case he gets into a firefight, it's a handy rule. Don't forget you've got it, because it's the sort of thing you might only find out after he's just been gunned down by someone. But yeah, it's useful to know. Okay, and finally, Joker's Paramilitary 3, the one you'll probably use the least in practice for now. Another 28 repper and only $400 only. So yeah, he's taking up funding for guns that might be used by other. Joker's not shy of having a lot of options for guns. So yeah, this guy's more specialised. Useful. I think he's a good model though. So I'm all happy to have him. But he's certainly a niche that isn't filled in the Joker's collection so far. So at least there's that. Same stat line again. The knife. He has a rocket launcher, obviously, and it's the same rocket launcher stat you see across the board elsewhere. It uses the blast template, which makes it kind of special. But with only the one shot, it can really only do that 3 damage points of blood. So unless your opponent's been pretty dumb, or you've managed to cluster him up yourself, then yeah, it's you're not going to get that much use out of it compared to something that just deletes people, like that custom assault gun we saw just now. But yeah, anti-tank is an interesting rule which you don't see very often in the game. And against some enemies, anti-tank is really useful. LexCorp is his power armor. What I'd like to see is a bit more use of. I like vehicles to make a bit more of a comeback, and then rocket launchers might come into it themselves again, and yeah, that would be interesting to see. But yes, he's got the paranoid rule, which is where he gets an extra defense marker if he's damaged at the start of the turn. So that's very. You don't know whether that's going to be useful or not, because again, defense markers only work in close combat, so he then has to be in close combat to make use of it, which means he's not firing his rocket launcher, and meh. Again, it's these guys. These are all very useful stand-ins. Is it an essential set? Some will say it is because of that Paramilitary 2's custom assault gun. Some people swear by that gun, I promise, but in Joker particularly, you do have other options. Honestly, you do. So it might be that if your budget is a consideration, which for most people it can be, you've got to factor that in, haven't you? And this isn't necessarily a necessary set. Okay, let's move on to the last set in this collection. Okay, and on to the Joker's Victims set. So this is another blister pack of 3 models, and I'm actually going to cover them all at the same time because they all serve the same overall purpose. There's variations in terms of weaponry, but that's it really. They all have the same traits and the same cost, and as you can see, these guys are the right bottom of the bargain basement and 5 reputation points each. A henchman for Joker with the most garbage tier stats you've seen ever, probably, on the model, short of swarms and things like that. 3 each for willpower and endurance, 2 each for attack and defense, the worst strength, 8-inch movement, and yeah, that's that really. Yes, these are not normal models. The 5 reputation each is incredibly cheap, like ridiculously. And so, you could be forgiven for thinking, well, that's amazing because they just put them in inspiration range and then just do all your suspects in one go. But no. They have the stupid trait, which prevents them from being able to perform manipulate actions, so no picking up or putting down of suspects at all. So these guys will pretty much be useless for just about all of the objective cards in your deck, really. So these are not scoring models, really. They do have some things, but it's just, since don't forget, they've all got the same traits, so they're all stupid. They've got the feint rule, which sort of makes it, I think, it's in they feint easily or something, I don't know, but basically means that they're removed as soon as they get knocked out, even if, regardless. So just take off 3 hit points of them and then that's that. They have the horde rule, which means you can take 4 copies of them each, so up to 12 of these, obviously, because there's 3 variants, each of taking 4. That's a lot. They have their actual unique rule is mindless monster, and that's an interesting one. It kind of reinforces the zombie-esque aspect of these models. At the start of this model's activation, so when you activate them, you target the closest enemy model. If the Joker's victim then moves into contact with that model, it can perform an attack action for free. Which, yes, it does mean that it means you can move and attack without needing to give them a audacity, which is a bonus. Of course, this attack is not going to be very powerful, regardless of which variant of Joker's victim you use. Even the one with the knife is unlikely to do much damage. You're basically aiming for that strength roll and a 6 to go through, which is it's not a reliable form of damage dealing at all. But that with Death Pack, potentially you could eventually get some damage through, especially on henchmen and things. And I'm not sure that these are really useful models to have if you're really like banking on using them for damage or anything. These are more annoyance models more than anything else. They do factor in on some objective cards in the Joker deck, such as psychopaths. They'd be really good for that. They handy. And of course, don't forget from the last quick critique with the 3 Jokers, the criminal spawns these models as addition when models die nearby him. So there's something there for that. But overall, these are more filler models, I reckon, especially in crews that don't include the 3 Jokers. When you've got those points left over, though, you can do worse than to fill up on a few extra models. Use them to put some pressure on your opponents, get that outnumbering bonus against someone, and then go in with another model which can hit harder. A canny opponent will, either realise that they are just the chaff for what they are, but I haven't used them yet, of course, so maybe I'm missing out on something. But overall, I think they're fun to use. Now, I've got 1 set of these. Is it worth taking more? I don't know. It's the sort of thing I'd be intrigued to think about, and I'm going to come back with my thoughts in just a second. I just need to change the battery on the camera, so I shall be back very, very shortly. I beg your pardon about that. Sorry about that. The battery life suddenly went from 10 minutes down to 2 minutes in the space of a blink of an eye, so started to panic internally. But yes, back to the Joker's victims, and I was thinking, these models can be taken 4 times each, but you don't get any variants if you buy 4 blister packs to get the maximum use at no insignificant cost to your wallet. For these models, which are 5 points each, it's I don't know if that's really practical for many people. It's the sort of thing I'd be rather careful about recommending as well, of course. What I was thinking was the Joker's victims themselves are effectively zombies, right? In terms of how they work, and even in the comics, they're kind of zombie-like. A lot of the Joker's rules and models released, such as Punchline and things like that, and even the Joker's Paramilitary, do kind of tie in a little bit more with the Joker War comic book as opposed to the 3 Jokers. You might find that you could even get some alternative sculpts out of these by looking at some of the STL files, which are available for people to print out for you from some websites. Like you could get some sort of similar scaled kind of sprinting zombie models, and in Joker War the Joker does actually use his reanimated victims, corpses of his earlier exploits, and he has found some technology which can sort of like puppet them, so to speak, and yeah, they're very eerie, and yes, zombies with some extra sculpted smiles on them would do quite well, and you probably get some for me the aesthetic is to have different models rather than copies. I'm not a big fan of multiples of the same pose and things like that, and for Joker's victims I wouldn't be really up for a lot of converting work for 5-point models either. So if you wanted to, and of course zombies, the Joker War is a good comic book to copy the theme of as well. So I was thinking it's up to your mileage may vary if you were going to be a stickler for exact copies of these models, to be used in your personal collection. If you wanted to go down the whole horde, route for them, I just, for me personally, it's not an aesthetic choice I choose to pursue. So it's very much it's down to you. But I'd say that if you're playing friendly games, you could definitely get some interesting like variant zombies and things like that, and use these rules for them, as long as you were clear which was which Joker's victim, which one had knives, which one had pipes, and which one was just hands. That's what I think. And obviously if you're not going to go on the tournament scene with these guys and you found some weird meta or something that uses a lot of them, then you're probably going to have to purchase multiple packs of this blister here. But other than that, I can't see any reason why someone would be too worried about you using alternatives. It's the only time I would probably say that alternatives are bit too thumbs up for me. I'm very much like, I like to play with the exact with the models that the company makes for their rules. I'm not a big fan of people using substitutes all the time. It's just a thing. I could go into it in a whole different subject, but that's my broad views on it, very broad. Anyway, so that's the Joker's Victims, a very odd and unique edition, and sort of could possibly see it in other factions as well, probably, as time goes on, with like brainwashed cultists and whatnot maybe coming in later on. We'll see. Anyway, that's my quick critique on the second part of the Joker release, shall we say, for this time. If there's any interesting uses you can think of for the Joker's Victims, or anything I might have missed at all, does Joker's Paramilitary suddenly become a must purchase because of that custom assault gun toting guy, which seems to be a thing that everyone seems to need in their crew, depending upon whether it's Lorida for the Batman crew, or the organised crime Black Mask dude, or any of the other incarnations of that gun that we're going to see. Let me know in the comments below, and yes, I'll see you next time. I am Shieldwall100. Ta-ta for now.